The gleaming hull of the Stargazer reflected the harsh sunlight as it orbited high above Earth. Shaped like a massive silver arrowhead, the vessel was the pinnacle of human engineering and the first of its kind. A luxury space cruise liner designed for civilian travel to Mars. Aboard the ship, excitement buzzed through the air as passengers settled into their cabins and explored the lavish amenities. For most, this represented the trip of a lifetime, a 2-week journey to the Red Planet and back, with several days orbiting Mars to take in the alien vistas. Elara Chen stood at a viewport, gazing at the blue marble of Earth below. At 17, she was one of the youngest passengers aboard, having won her ticket in a global essay contest about the future of space exploration. It still felt surreal to be here. She ran a hand through her short black hair, marveling at how it floated in the microgravity. "Pretty amazing view, huh?" came a voice beside her. Elara turned to see a lanky boy about her age with unruly brown curls. He grinned and extended a hand. "I'm Zain. Guessing you're another contest winner?" Elara shook his hand, returning the smile. "That's right, I'm Elara. Can't believe we're actually here. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "I know what you mean," Zain replied. "I've been obsessed with space since I was a little kid. Never imagined I'd get to go to Mars before I even graduated high school." He gestured down the curved hallway. "Want to check out the observation deck? I heard it has a 180-degree view of space." "Definitely," Elara said. As they made their way through the ship, Elara marveled at the futuristic interior. Soft lighting illuminated the sleek white walls and floors. Holographic signs directed passengers to various amenities: restaurants, shops, entertainment venues, and more. It was like a floating luxury hotel. The observation deck took Elara's breath away. An enormous curved window stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a panoramic view of Earth and the star-studded blackness of space beyond. Comfortable lounge chairs were arranged to take in the spectacle. "Wow," Elara breathed. "Now this is a view." She and Zain settled into chairs near the window, chatting excitedly about their shared passion for space and science. As the hours passed, more passengers trickled in, equally awestruck by the vista before them. A chime sounded, and a holographic figure materialized in the center of the room, Captain Elara Chen, resplendent in her white and gold uniform. "Good evening, passengers. We are making final preparations for our departure to Mars. Please ensure you are in your assigned cabins or one of the designated common areas for the acceleration phase. We will be engaging our antimatter drive in approximately 1 hour. Thank you for choosing Stargazer Cruises for this historic journey." As the hologram faded, a ripple of anticipation passed through the crowd. Elara felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a touch of nervousness. This was really happening. They were about to embark on the first civilian cruise to another planet. She and Zain made their way back to the passenger cabins, parting ways to head to their respective rooms. Elara's cabin was small but efficiently designed, with a bed that could be folded into the wall and a window offering a view of space. As she strapped herself into the acceleration chair, Elara's mind wandered to her family back on Earth. She wished they could be here to share in this incredible experience. A low hum began to vibrate through the ship, growing in intensity. Elara's chair tilted back automatically as the countdown to ignition appeared on a screen before her. Her heart raced as the final seconds ticked by. With a tremendous roar that she felt more than heard, the antimatter drive engaged. Elara was pressed back into her chair as the Stargazer accelerated away from Earth orbit, embarking on its journey to Mars. The blue planet receded rapidly, soon shrinking to the size of a marble. After about 30 minutes, the acceleration eased, and Elara's chair returned to its upright position. She unstrapped herself with shaky hands, feeling a mix of exhilaration and disorientation. They were now hurtling through space at an incomprehensible speed, the advanced propulsion system allowing them to make the journey to Mars in a fraction of the time it would take with conventional rockets. As Elara left her cabin to explore the ship further, she noticed a couple engaged in a heated argument down the hallway. A tall man with close-cropped gray hair was speaking in hushed but intense tones to a younger woman with long red hair. "We have to do something, Sarah," the man was saying. "We can't just stand by while humanity commits this blasphemy." The woman, Sarah, placed a hand on his arm. "I know, David, but we need to be patient. Wait for the right moment." She broke off as she noticed Elara watching them. The pair quickly composed themselves and walked briskly away. Elara frowned, puzzled by this strange interaction. What did the man mean by blasphemy? And what were they planning to do? Pushing the odd encounter from her mind, Elara made her way to one of the ship's restaurants for dinner. The dining area was designed to mimic the atmosphere of an upscale Earth restaurant, with holographic windows displaying various scenic vistas. Elara selected a table with a view of the Parisian skyline. As she perused the menu, displayed on a holographic screen above the table, Zain appeared by her side. "Mind if I join you?" he asked with a grin. "Not at all," Elara replied, gesturing to the seat across from her. They placed their orders. The ship's advanced food synthesizers could recreate virtually any dish, and fell into easy conversation. Zain was from London, it turned out, and shared Elara's passion for astrophysics. "So what do you think of the ship so far?" Zain asked between bites of his synthesized steak. "It's incredible," Elara replied, "like something out of a sci-fi movie. Though I did overhear a weird conversation earlier." She recounted the argument she'd witnessed between the man and woman in the hallway. Zain listened with a furrowed brow. "That does sound odd," he said. "Maybe they're just nervous about the journey. I mean, we are the first civilians to attempt this trip. It's bound to make some people uneasy." Elara nodded, but couldn't shake a nagging feeling that there was more to it than simple nerves. Still, she didn't want to dwell on it. They were on the adventure of a lifetime, after all. The next few days passed in a blur of wonder and excitement. Elara spent her time exploring the ship's many amenities, attending lectures on Mars and space travel, and gazing out at the star-filled void beyond the viewports. She and Zain became fast friends, bonding over their shared interests and the awe-inspiring nature of their journey. 4 days into the trip, Elara woke in the middle of the night to a strange sound. A low, rhythmic thumping was reverberating through the ship. She got out of bed, frowning as she pressed her ear to the wall. The sound was coming from somewhere below her cabin. Curious and a bit concerned, Elara slipped on some clothes and left her room to investigate. The hallways were dimly lit in the ship's night cycle, and she encountered no one as she made her way to the nearest elevator. Following the sound, she descended several levels, finding herself in a part of the ship she hadn't explored before. The thumping grew louder as she crept down a narrow corridor lined with pipes and conduits. It seemed to be coming from behind a door marked "Engineering, Authorized Personnel Only." Elara hesitated, knowing she shouldn't be here, but her curiosity got the better of her. She pressed her ear to the door. Muffled voices came from within, tense and argumentative. Elara strained to make out the words. "Have to act now," a man was saying. She recognized the voice as belonging to David, the gray-haired man she'd seen arguing in the hallway days earlier. "We're approaching the point of no return." "But we're not ready," another voice protested. "If we rush this, the whole plan could fall apart." "We don't have a choice," David replied firmly. "The window is closing. We move tonight, understood?" There were murmurs of assent, then the sound of movement within the room. Elara's eyes widened as she realized she was about to be discovered. She turned to flee, but in her haste she stumbled, crashing into a cart of tools outside the door with a tremendous clatter. The voices in the room fell silent. Then the door slid open, revealing David and 5 others, all wearing engineering uniforms. Their eyes locked onto Elara, who stood frozen in fear. "Well," David said, his voice dangerously calm, "it seems we have an eavesdropper." Before Elara could react, 2 of the men grabbed her arms, dragging her into the room. The door slid shut behind them with an ominous hiss. "What do we do with her?" one of the men asked, maintaining a firm grip on Elara's arm. David studied her for a moment, his gray eyes cold. "We can't let her compromise the mission. Lock her in the storage closet for now. We'll decide what to do with her after we've taken control of the ship." Elara's mind reeled. Take control of the ship? What was going on? "What are you talking about?" she demanded, struggling against her captors. "What mission?" David's lips curled into a humorless smile. "We're on a holy mission, young lady. to stop humanity from spreading its corruption to the stars. He nodded to his companions. "Get her out of sight. We have work to do." Despite her protests and struggles, Elara was shoved into a small storage closet. The door sealed shut, leaving her in darkness. She pounded on the door, shouting for help, but the thick metal muffled her cries. As the initial panic subsided, Elara forced herself to think rationally. She was trapped, yes, but she had overheard their plans. Somehow she had to warn the crew about what was happening. But how? She felt around the closet, searching for anything that might help. Her hand brushed against something smooth and rectangular, a tablet. It must have been left behind by one of the engineering crew. Elara's heart raced as she activated the device, its screen illuminating the small space. To her dismay, it was locked. She tried a few common passwords, but nothing worked. Then she remembered something from one of the lectures she'd attended. The ship systems were all interconnected through a central AI. Maybe she could access it through voice commands, even on a locked device. "Computer," she said clearly, hoping the tablet's microphone would pick up her voice. "Emergency protocol, contact bridge." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft blue light emanated from the tablet, and a calm voice spoke. "Emergency protocol activated. Please state the nature of your emergency." Relief flooded through Elara. "Intruder alert," she said urgently. "A group of passengers are planning to take control of the ship. They're in the engineering section. I'm trapped in a storage closet." There was a pause. Then the computer responded. "Alert received and verified. Security protocols activated. Remain calm. Help is on the way." Elara sagged against the wall, hoping she'd done enough. Now all she could do was wait. Meanwhile, in the engine room, David and his followers were enacting their plan. They had spent months preparing for this moment, infiltrating the ship's crew and studying its systems. Now they worked quickly to override the ship's controls. "Propulsion systems secured," one of the men reported. "We have control of the engines. Life support and artificial gravity are under our control," another added. David nodded in satisfaction. "Excellent. Now for the bridge." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights flashed as the computer's voice echoed through the corridors. "Security alert. Unauthorized access detected in engineering. All passengers please return to your cabins. Security teams to engineering immediately." "Damn it," David snarled. "How did they know? Never mind. Initiate phase 2 now. We'll have to take the bridge by force." As chaos erupted throughout the Stargazer, passengers were jolted awake by the alarms and announcements. Zain stumbled out of his cabin, disoriented and alarmed. His first thought was of Elara. Was she okay? He made his way down the hallway, fighting against the flow of confused passengers heading back to their rooms. "Elara," he called out, pounding on her cabin door. When there was no response, he overrode the lock with an emergency code he'd memorized just in case. The cabin was empty, the bed unslept in. Where was she? Worry gnawed at Zain's stomach as he tried to think where she might have gone. He had to find her. On the bridge, Captain Nazari and her crew worked frantically to regain control of the ship's systems. "Report," she barked. "Engineering's locked us out of propulsion and life support," her first officer replied tensely. "We're operating on backup systems. Security teams are en route, but whoever's behind this knows the ship's systems inside and out." Nazari's jaw clenched. This was supposed to be a routine pleasure cruise, and now it had turned into a nightmare. "Keep trying to regain control," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to Earth. We're going to need help." Back in the storage closet, Elara could hear muffled sounds of commotion outside. Had help arrived? She pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear what was happening. Suddenly, the door slid open. Elara stumbled back, ready to defend herself. But it was Zain standing there, eyes wide with relief. "Elara, thank God!" he exclaimed, pulling her into a quick hug. "Are you okay? What happened?" As they hurried away from the engineering section, Elara quickly filled Zain in on what she'd overheard. His face grew grave as he listened. "We need to get to the bridge," he said. "Warn them about what these people are planning." They made their way through the ship's corridors, trying to avoid the panic-stricken passengers and crew members rushing about. As they neared the bridge, they heard sounds of a scuffle ahead. Peering around a corner, They saw a group of men led by David overpowering the security team outside the bridge. They were armed with what looked like makeshift weapons, tools from engineering fashioned into clubs and blades. "We have to do something," Elara whispered urgently. Zain nodded, his mind racing. "I have an idea. Follow me." They backtracked to a maintenance hatch Zain had noticed earlier. It opened into a narrow crawl space between decks. "This should lead us to the bridge," Zain explained as they shimmed through the tight space. "Hopefully we can warn them before those guys break in." Inside the bridge, Captain Nazari and her crew listened in horror to the sounds of fighting outside. "Seal the doors," she ordered. "Initiate lockdown protocols." But it was too late. The door slid open and David strode in, flanked by his armed followers. The bridge crew were quickly overwhelmed and restrained. "In the name of God, I am taking command of this vessel," David announced, his eyes blazing with zealous fervor. "Humanity's corruption ends here. We will not be allowed to taint the stars with our presence." Captain Nazari glared at him defiantly. "You're insane. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You'll kill everyone on board." David smiled coldly. "A necessary sacrifice to save countless future souls from damnation. Now you will plot a course directly into the sun. This ship and all aboard will be cleansed in holy fire." As the hijackers forced the crew to input the new course, a ceiling panel suddenly popped open. Elara and Zain dropped onto the bridge, catching everyone by surprise. In the moment of confusion, Captain Nazari acted. She drove her elbow into the stomach of the man restraining her, then lunged for the emergency console. Her fingers flew across the controls, initiating a ship-wide emergency protocol. Gravity suddenly shifted, throwing everyone off balance as the artificial gravity plates in the floor reversed polarity. Those who weren't strapped down found themselves floating helplessly toward the ceiling. David roared in fury, flailing as he drifted upward. "Stop them!" he shouted to his followers, who were equally disoriented by the sudden loss of gravity. Captain Nazari seized the moment of chaos. "Security override Nazari Alpha 7, she called out. The ship's computer responded immediately, locking down all controls and sealing the bridge doors. Elara and Zain clung to a console, trying to orient themselves in the zero-gravity environment. Around them, a bizarre struggle unfolded as the hijackers and crew grappled in midair. "The controls!" Elara shouted to Zain, pointing to the navigation console. "We have to correct our course." Zain nodded, pushing off from their position toward the console. But one of David's men intercepted him, grabbing his leg and yanking him off course. Elara didn't hesitate. She launched herself toward the console, her zero-G training from the pre-flight simulations kicking in. Her fingers flew over the controls, desperately trying to undo the course change that would send them hurtling into the sun. "No!" David bellowed, realizing what she was doing. He pushed off from the ceiling, propelling himself toward Elara with murderous intent. But he never reached her. Captain Nazari intercepted him, wrapping her arms around his midsection in a zero-G grapple. "I don't think so," she growled, using her momentum to spin them away from Elara. Zain, meanwhile, had managed to break free from his attacker. He made his way to Elara's side, helping her navigate the complex ship systems. "There!" he exclaimed. "Course corrected. We're back on our original trajectory to Mars." A cheer went up from the loyal crew members, even as they continued to struggle with the hijackers. But their victory was short-lived. Alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a diagram of the ship with several sections flashing red. "Captain," the ship's AI announced, "critical damage detected in the antimatter containment systems. Breach imminent. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 15 minutes. The color drained from Captain Nazari's face. The saboteurs, she realized. They must have damaged the engines during their takeover attempt. David laughed maniacally, still restrained by the captain. "You see? It's God's will. We'll all be cleansed in holy fire after all." "Not if I can help it," Captain Nazari growled. She looked to Elara and Zain. "You two, you've proven yourselves capable. I need your help." As security personnel finally broke through to the bridge, taking control of David and his followers, Captain Nazari quickly outlined a desperate plan. "The antimatter containment field is failing," she explained. "If it collapses completely, the resulting explosion will vaporize the ship and everyone on it. Our only chance is to eject the antimatter core before that happens. But without our main engine, how will we get to Mars? Zain asked. We won't, the captain said grimly, but we'll be alive. We can send out a distress signal and wait for rescue. Elara's mind raced. The ejection systems are in engineering, right? We'll have to go down there to manually override them. Captain Nazari nodded. Exactly. I can talk you through the process from here, but you'll have to move fast. That area may already be flooded with radiation from the containment breach. Elara and Zain exchanged a look. The danger was clear, but so were the stakes. They nodded in unison. We'll do it, Elara said firmly. Good, the captain replied. She tossed them each a small device. Emergency radiation shields. They'll buy you some time, but not much. Now go. As Elara and Zain raced from the bridge, Captain Nazari turned her attention to coordinating the rest of the crisis response. Security teams spread throughout the ship, rounding up the remaining saboteurs. Medical personnel prepared for possible radiation casualties. In the corridors, panic had given way to an eerie calm as passengers huddled in their cabins, following emergency protocols. Elara and Zain sprinted past, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. As they neared engineering, the ship's AI warned them, "Caution! Elevated radiation levels detected ahead. Proceed with extreme caution." They activated their radiation shields, which enveloped them in a shimmering energy field. "I hope these work as well as they say," Zain muttered. "Guess we'll find out," Elara replied grimly. "Come on." They entered engineering, and immediately the severity of the situation became clear. Warning lights flashed everywhere, and the air seemed to shimmer with heat and radiation. At the far end of the room, they could see the antimatter core, a massive cylinder surrounded by crackling energy fields that were visibly fluctuating. "We're in engineering," Elara reported through her comlink to the bridge. "Where do we go from here?" Captain Nazari's voice crackled in their ears. "Look for a console marked Core Ejection Protocol. You'll need to input a series of commands to override the safeties." They spotted the console and rushed over. Zain's fingers flew over the controls as the captain read out the override sequence. But when he tried to initiate the ejection, the console flashed red. "It's not working," Zain exclaimed. "Something's blocking the ejection mechanism." There was a moment of tense silence from the bridge. Then, "There's an emergency manual release," the captain said, "but it's right next to the core housing. The radiation levels there." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Even with their shields, exposure that close to the failing containment field would be deadly within minutes. Elara made a decision. "I'll do it," she said. "Zain, you need to get out of here. If this doesn't work, at least one of us should survive to warn the rescue teams." "No way," Zain protested. "I'm not leaving you. We do this together." There was no time to argue. They made their way to the core housing, the heat and radiation intensifying with every step. They could feel it even through their shields, a prickling sensation on their skin that quickly grew to a burning ache. The manual release was a large lever set into the floor. It took both of them, straining with all their strength, to budge it. Alarms blared as the ejection sequence began, warning everyone to brace for impact. "Core ejection in progress," the ship's AI announced. "Impact in 3, 2, 1. A massive shudder ran through the ship as the antimatter core was jettisoned. Elara and Zain clung to each other, watching through a viewport as the glowing cylinder shot away from the ship, quickly receding into the darkness of space. Moments later, a blinding flash lit up the void, the antimatter core detonating at a safe distance. The shockwave hit the ship seconds later, tossing Elara and Zain to the floor. As the rumbling subsided, they looked at each other in disbelief. They had done it. They had saved the ship. But their relief was short-lived. The radiation exposure had taken its toll. As the adrenaline faded, they both began to feel the effects: nausea, dizziness, their vision blurring. "We need to get to medical," Zain mumbled, his words slurring slightly. "Right now." Supporting each other, they staggered out of engineering. The last thing Elara remembered before losing consciousness was the sound of running feet and voices shouting for a medical team. She awoke an indeterminate time later in the ship's medical bay. The first thing she saw was Zain in the bed next to her, pale but alive, offering a weak smile. "Welcome back," he said hoarsely. Before Elara could reply, Captain Nazari appeared between their beds. The captain looked exhausted, but there was pride in her eyes as she regarded them. "You two saved everyone on this ship," she said softly. "I don't know how we can ever thank you." Elara tried to sit up, wincing at the movement. "The other passengers, the crew, is everyone okay?" The captain nodded. "A few injuries during the crisis, but nothing life-threatening. Thanks to you, we avoided a catastrophe." Her expression grew more serious. "We've sent out distress signals. A rescue ship from Mars is on its way, but it will take them about a week to reach us. Until then, we're running on auxiliary power and limited life support." "What about David and the other hijackers?" Zain asked. "In custody," Nazari replied grimly. "They'll face charges when we return to Earth. We're still trying to understand the full scope of their plan, and if they had any other collaborators." She placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "You both need to rest and recover. The medical team says you got a serious dose of radiation, but they were able to treat you in time. You should make a full recovery." As the captain left, Elara turned to Zain. Despite everything they'd been through, she couldn't help but smile. "Some vacation, huh?" Zain chuckled, then winced. "Yeah, not exactly the relaxing cruise I had in mind. But hey, at least we got to see that antimatter explosion. Pretty cool, right?" Elara laughed, marveling at the absurdity of their situation. Here they were, adrift in space, recovering from radiation poisoning after foiling a terrorist plot. And somehow, it all seemed worth it for that moment of scientific wonder. Over the next week, as they waited for rescue, the passengers and crew of the Stargazer came together in a way no one could have anticipated. The near-death experience had forged a unique bond between them all. Elara and Zain, hailed as heroes once they recovered enough to leave the medical bay, found themselves at the center of attention. They recounted their experience countless times, each retelling bringing home just how close they had come to disaster. Despite the rationed resources and limited power, a sense of camaraderie pervaded the ship. Passengers and crew alike pitched in to help maintain systems and keep spirits high. Impromptu classes and skill-sharing sessions sprang up. Scientists aboard gave lectures on Mars and space travel. Artists organized creative workshops. Even with their vacation cut short, people were determined to make the most of this unique experience. Elara found herself reflecting on the events that had led them here. The actions of David and his followers troubled her deeply. How could anyone believe that humanity didn't belong among the stars? To her, this journey, even with its near-disastrous turn, only reinforced the importance of pushing forward, of exploring and expanding human knowledge. One evening, about 5 days into their wait for rescue, Elara stood in the observation deck with Zain. With the main power systems offline, the view was darker than before, the stars even more vibrant against the backdrop of space. Mars hung in the distance, a rust-colored disk tantalizing in its proximity. "We were so close," Elara murmured, a note of wistfulness in her voice. Zain nodded. "Yeah, but hey, this whole experience, it's only made me more determined, you know? To go back out there, to reach Mars for real next time." Elara turned to him, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "You too? I've been thinking the same thing. After everything we've seen and done, how could we not want to go back?" They grinned at each other, a shared understanding passing between them. Whatever happened next, this wasn't the end of their journey into space. It was only the beginning. The next day, a cheer went up throughout the ship as the rescue vessel from Mars finally came into view. As airlocks engaged and supplies were transferred, the passengers of the Stargazer prepared to board the rescue ship for their journey home. Elara took one last look around her cabin, marveling at how much had changed since she first stepped aboard. She had come seeking an adventure, a glimpse of humanity's future among the stars. What she found was something far more profound, a test of courage, a battle against fear and extremism, and a reaffirmation of the human spirit's resilience. As she joined the other passengers in the transfer to the rescue ship, Elara felt a mix of emotions. Disappointment at not reaching Mars, certainly. Relief at heading home after their ordeal. But mostly, she felt a burning determination. This experience had shown her the challenges humanity would face as it reached for the stars. Not just technical and physical, but philosophical and ethical as well. Someone would need to help navigate those challenges, to stand up for science and exploration in the face of fear and dogma, to push humanity forward while remembering the lessons of the past. Why not her? As the rescue ship disengaged from the Stargazer and began its journey back to Earth, Elara made a silent vow. This would not be her last voyage into space. Somehow, someway, she would be back. And next time, she would reach Mars. The stars stretched out before them, a glittering tapestry of possibility. And somewhere out there, Elara knew, her future was waiting.